student said, correct? Is that is that how you want it scripted?
I'm sorry, repeat that. Recording in progress took over.
So the way you want the evidence scripted is just like the example here, at 0.16 seconds during the video, the teacher said, we will explain the main idea or supporting details. Just evidence, or do you want it based according to the domains? Like teacher showed evidence of domain 3, for example. I've done 2 forms. I did it scripted, just like the example, and then I did an evidence where I'm just explaining the domains. Do you understand my question?
Not really.
That was actually my question as well.
I'm trying to figure out exactly what you're
okay,
saying.
So
let me if I can say it differently.
Okay, so I'm an ELL for sure. Okay, so the first one is I've got the evidence. The teacher said we'll learn about the main idea. Then on the 10 seconds, the teacher gave the materials out. So basically everything that happened in the classroom, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I wasn't sure. So then I turned around and did another one where at the 16th second, I saw evidence of domain 3. And then I listed it. Which one?
I don't need all that. I need it scripted. And here's the thing. When you go in to do a class observation of a teacher, you're not going to spend time trying to go back and figure out what standard am I looking at. What you may do it after the fact. Okay. But when you're just doing a teacher observation, you're just listing literally what did they do.
Okay.
But do you want the time attached to it though?
As I said before, 16 seconds, 15 seconds, that does not matter to me. I mean,
no, so no time.
I am not going to be tracking your time. No, I'm going to track what you've listed and what did you capture, not so much of the time.
Okay. And if we go over the narrative form evaluation, if we have gone over a little bit, I know you said one paragraph for this, one paragraph on narrative form, one paragraph your feelings. If we go over a little bit, is that okay, or should I?
Are you saying for the narrative? You're
correct,
asking
evaluation.
If you go over by a little bit, sure. But I don't need 3 pages.
No. Absolutely not.
And then I'm just putting that out there because yeah, it's a lot to grade. It's a whole lot to grade when you're looking at 2 classes of student work. So yes, so as briefly as you can get it on there, it's perfect.
Dr. Cockrell?
Yes.
Have you noticed that there's a high correlation with the length of the papers and the people that ask questions?
Not really.
Okay. Because I'm always like 1 or 2, 3 sentences over.
Yeah, I mean, the sentence over that kind of stuff isn't a big deal. But when it says like 1 page and then it's 3 pages, that's a lot. If you really think about it, it's a lot. It takes a lot to grade, and it just is. And not, and if you got a lot to say, I get that. So I want to read what you put time into doing. So don't shorten it by, 1 or 2 sentences or a paragraph.
But and just I have that half question really quick, if possible. The best practices, not the best, the domains, the PowerPoint for the domains. Mm-hmm. Basically, what we're doing is, since we did domain 1 and 2, and we answered the question, what would administrator do, etc. We're taking those questions and we're just plugging in a bullet form in a PowerPoint, correct? Domains 1 through 6.
That's it.
I am done with the questions.
That's what
Thank
I thought.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right. Candace's hand has been up for a few seconds now. Go ahead, Candace.
I just had a quick question. I already submitted my administrator growth rubric, and when I did, the turnitin.com report said that my submission must contain 20 or more words. It has a score for the narrative because I submitted it as 2 different documents, but I was just making sure that was going to be okay.
That's fine. If it has a score for the narrative, that'll be okay. Because the PowerPoint isn't going to score as much because of all the graphics and all of those types of things that are in it. But the narrative is where Turnitin is checking to see if you used AI, because the university is now cracking down on people who are submitting AI generated reports. And with that, thank you for asking that question because it brought my mind to something. I know I've saw like at least 2 papers that domains, I think it's 5 and 6, where you don't have a Turnitin score. It's because AI, it's saying, you know, it's generating a report that's saying that's not your work. So if you get that screen, you need to go back through your paper and check it. And if you are using AI, then you need to go in and make it more of your language and
What
then resubmit.
I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, me either. What is AI?
That's artificial intelligence. It's when you use like I use Grammarly for all of my edits. I use Grammarly.
Okay.
I purchased that when I started writing my dissertation 3 years ago. So, but then it wasn't so much as AI. It was just Grammarly. It checked your paper to make sure you had, you know, subject verb agreement,
Right.
the things that you don't want to get, you know, points taken for. Well, now you can literally highlight it, click improve it, and it'll rewrite it for you. So that is a system that, and it's a lot of different programs now that are out there. School Rock, Schoolhouse is another one that's supposed to be teacher friendly and it's supposed to help you write lesson plans. But there are a lot of different AI programs that people are using to write papers. And I know William Carey is looking at ways to get in front of it. Turnitin is only one that is only the one that I know of that can really catch it. And it's literally not catching them all because AI is getting more creative.
Okay.
Just be careful with that, even going forward with your courses, because right now they don't have a policy. But William Carey, in this current time, is developing a policy for AI generated work, and it's going to be very punitive. Just going forward.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yes, just for clarity.
You went mute.
I'm sorry, can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay, so just for clarity, when we're doing the, let me go back to the form. When we're doing the scripting form, you don't want time. You only want what the teacher said or did. And you don't want to include, you don't want us to include the domains that attach to that. Correct?
Okay. Let me go back through that. Give me just a second here.
Or maybe you could just pull it up if you can, and
That's exactly what I'm doing. Read my mind over there.
thank
Okay.
you.
Not showing what I needed to show. Let's try that again. It will not let it go to the right screen, and I don't know why. This is where Zoom and I disagree when it doesn't do exactly what I ask it to do. All right, there we go. Is this the form you're referring to?
Yes, ma'am. I think, well, no, that's not the one I have pulled up, but I can pull that one up.
Well, I can take you to the other one.
But yeah, that's it. That's professional growth. That's it. I'm sorry. That was it.
Okay, so this form is the one where you're talking about like times. If you can script and put a time there, what I'm saying to you, y'all are wanting a definitive. Do I do a time or do I not do a time? And what I'm saying is, I don't care about the time. If you put it there, great. If you don't, I'm not going to be punitive there. What I want to see is what the teacher is doing, what the student is doing. That's the part of this that I'm going to spend my time reading to see if you captured that. Now, when we start talking about the domains up here, remember we talked about you won't see professional responsibilities because it's a video of a teacher teaching, but you can see culture and learning environment. You can see student understanding. These are things that you can see. It's harder to see lesson design, but you can see if it has a high level of learning. So those things you can see. You can't see for, and again, those are things you can't see because you're not there with them. This is what I spend more time reading. When you get to this form, this is when you're really getting into the meat of these standards, whether or not the lessons align to high learning or whatever, and the evidence that you saw there. So going back to what Renata said, her second response, that response go here. What's the evidence that you can give that the standards were aligned to the college career readiness standards? What parts of this did you notice that she made meaningful connections for previous and future learning? You will list that evidence here. The teacher used whatever to show, if you're math and you're watching math, you can speak to the handout and how it's aligned to the standards. You could
Right.
speak to engagement. So when we start looking at students taking responsibility for learning and monitor student learning, the teacher is walking around the classroom and giving feedback to students as she stops to talk to them. You can give evidence, and you would rate that teacher, whether it's a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. So that's when you'll really get into talking about how well it was aligned to the rubric. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so on this form, you're doing more of your note taking. So this is more of your note taking, what you observe. The second sheet is when you align it to whether or not that person is actually meeting the goals of the growth rubric, if they're meeting these domains. On
So
the
align that the second scripting form to the domains.
Yes, this is more about observation. This one is all about the domains. How did you see this happening? Okay, Heather, your question?
Yes, ma'am. Quick question of, so when you say that the first form, that's the form you're going to bring into the actual observation with the teacher when you do it.
Yes.
Then you take that form back to your office and you do the second form.
Right. And
That's pretty much how that goes.
Yes, and every district, to be honest with you, has a different form for this one. Most districts don't even use this form. Like ours is a long tricolored copy, those ones where you can tear them off and you keep one, they get one, and one goes in the system or in their file. So this is modified in every district. But yes, now when I go into a formal observation, I take both with me because I like to notate on both. But I take my notes on this form, this one right here. I've recreated it and put it on my iPad, but it's similar. I use this to notate. And I do put times down when I'm in a classroom. So just so you know that, I'll put, like, if I go in at 8 o'clock, I'll start with 8 o'clock. I'll list all the things that teacher's done. And if she transitions, say we're on the carpet and then the kids are done on the carpet, they get ready to go back to their seat, I'll put the time, transition back to their seats, and independent practice starts. Then I'll list what that independent practice is, all the things they're doing. If she stops them from that and they transition to something else, like going into their center activities, I'll notate the time, transition to group activities, and list what the group activities are. So that's how I manage time. And it's not every 2 seconds.
If you do go in and the teacher has the standard listed on the board and everything's like, there's clear indication what she's teaching, what they're covering, their activities for the day. If that is all on the board, do you notate that at the beginning of the observation?
So I'm gonna break some of that down for you. When I walk in a class, my teachers have to list those things on the board. Like, that's not a
Option.
if. It's not an if. It's you have to put it in. We call it having the lesson framed. So part of what we do is you put it on the board, and in 3rd grade, they do I can statements on the board, and it's on the board, but I'm looking to hear if you went over it with kids. So if it's framed, then you said today we're going to learn about, and you list out what you're going to be teaching. And some of my teachers have them on chart paper to start their lesson when they bring them to the carpet or whatnot. Some teachers have them on their PowerPoints, and that's the start of their lesson. So to me, if you just have it on the board, you haven't covered it. if you've cut, and then I'm not going to see that every time I go in a classroom, right? If I go in a classroom and they're in centers and they're working, I'll ask the kid, like, what are y'all working on? And if they can tell me, then yes, I know that teacher framed that lesson. But yes, I do check off whether or not it's listed and if the teacher has addressed it. Okay. All right, Renata. Renata, your hand was raised, and one other person.
Sorry. I remember the last meeting we had where you said it's okay if a teacher is a 4, a teacher is a 4. So when I look at domain 1, under the score 4, it says collaboration with the staff within the and across disciplines. Now I don't see that. So automatically I have to drop to a 3. Can you please advise on that?
Now, are you referring to this assignment?
Correct. Domain 1. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
So yes, and we've talked about this. You're not going to see all of these things in a video. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if it's something I can't, it's one of those not observed, I'm not going to ding you because I can't observe it. That's a me problem. That's not a you problem.
Okay.
You can put a line through that and put not observed, but if you see the other things, then that person has scored a 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because between the 4 and the 3, that's the only thing that doesn't put her to a 4. But I believe she was a 4, the one I chose.
Right, and a 4 and a 3, they're so closely related. It's the difference of small things.
All right.
Courtney, I see your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. On the evidence sorting form, and it may be on the other form. I'm back and forth between the two. But can you scroll just a tad? I'm trying to see where it says you're good right there at the top, where it talks about informal observation or formals. Which one do we choose?
That's not important.
Okay.
I'm gonna say it again. I need y'all to hear me. I'm not gonna pay any attention to this up here. Okay. What I'm gonna pay attention to is this part right here. What did you observe the teacher doing and the student doing? That's what I'm reading on this form. And then when I get to this form right here, I'm going to look to see what did you circle, 4, 3, 2, 1. And does your evidence match what you circle? It's like a part A, B question. Does your A match your B?
Gotcha.
And that's what I'm going to grade for. And if you put NA right here, I'm going to go back and look at my notes because I've watched all the videos and see if I've noticed any of that evidence in that area. And then if it's NA, but it is a place where you could have judged that domain, I will put a note in the comments that looking at standard domain 1.2, you could have noticed blah, blah, blah in that particular video.
Okay.
All right. Gotcha. Okay. Any more questions around the evaluation assignment?
I think I'm overthinking it, but go ahead.
I think so.
But one more question. The narrative part of it. You don't want the narrative on this form. You wanted a separate thing, right?
If you can add it, but it's going to be hard for you to add the narrative in a Word document to that document unless you are printing it all out and scanning it all back in and then attaching it. But that doesn't matter to me. Just be careful with formatting.
And with the narrative, you wanted APA. You just want to kind of talk about what we just kind of summarize the lesson.
That's correct.
Okay.
Pay attention to what's written on that assignment. Pay attention to what it's asking for. And that's what gets a lot of you guys with points. Pay attention to what it's asking. These directions are so plain. Paragraph 1 of the narrative, briefly cover what occurred during the observation. And this is the part that gets most people. That's a question right there. If you don't answer that question, that's a big part of your points here. Did you tell from the guidelines? Did you tell how many observations per Mississippi that you have to have? So don't miss that. That's the biggest part of paragraph 1. If I don't pick up how many observations are given a year per the Mississippi standards, I'm going to count that off big in paragraph 1. And then paragraph 2 is your reflection, and you can say I, my, me, and all the things. And then hit submit. Again, y'all are overthinking it.
Yes, I know I am.
All right. Any additional questions before we leave this? All right, Candace.
I don't mind if you show them mine real quick since I've already submitted it.
No, I cannot do that, but thank you for offering. All right. Okay, so let's move on. All right, and okay, Courtney, did you get your question answered? I still see your hand raised.
That's because I don't know how to take it down. I'm sorry. I'll figure that out in just a second. Okay, lower hand. I got it. Sorry.
No worries. I just didn't want to miss any questions. I know people are like, I don't want to keep asking questions, but believe it or not, somebody's having those same thoughts and they don't want to ask the question. So I appreciate the questions that are being asked because it clears things up. And some people haven't probably started. That may be their afternoon activity for today. And they may get into it and those questions come up. So you're helping by asking the questions. So never ever think you're not helping when you ask questions. I'm a question person myself. I like to know. It's called being an overachiever most times. All right, so we're going to jump right into the last activity. So we've done domains 1 through 6 at this point. And I know for some of you, some of the domains probably stood out to you a little bit more than others. Some because of where you are working right now or what space you're in and working with your mentors and all of those types of things. So your last activity for this class is an elevator speech. Everybody looked up then. People who were looking down looked at the camera. Wow, elevator speech it is. And we all know an elevator speech. How long does it take to get from floor 1 to floor 5? About a minute. So you got about 60 seconds. And I'm going to give you some think time. You have about 60 seconds. Take a domain. Okay, just 1 through 6. Pick your favorite. And you're going to give an elevator speech to the class of why that domain is so important. And guys, we already know all 6 work together for the good of your school. However, one probably did stand out to you more than all of the others. I've always shared my elevator speech as a first year principal, and I've been an AP. I have been an AP for 6 years. So in my capacity as the AP in the same school I'm in, I've always thought I knew all the things. Like, oh, that's going to be an easy job. I've been doing this a hot minute. I'm not moving schools. This is going to be a great year. Nah. It's one of those that you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. If you've ever heard that phrase, I've had that all year. And the one area that I would use my elevator speech for would be domain 6. That has been my learning curve this year. And it's because of all of the fiscal things, writing an actual budget, finishing up fiscal year 23 before you can spend fiscal year 24. How many ESSER funds do you have left from COVID? All those things have to be expended, but by September this. Like that was stuff I walked into and I'm like, what? What? I got money? No, you can only spend it on this. You can't spend it on this. You can't move it to this budget line. So if I had to do my elevator speech, it would have been on domain 6. Because all the other domains, I felt like I was rocking and rolling until I went to a principal's meeting and they were talking about all the finances and this budget code and that budget code. And you got a deadline for this and a deadline for that. And my head started spinning. And I was like, whoa, slow down. The new person in the room. And it was several of us new principals in the room. And we were all like, whoa. You know, so I'm sure when you were reading through some of these, if data wasn't your strong suit, that would be your thing. But I'm gonna stop talking because I've used my 60 seconds plus 30 more, and I'm gonna let you guys start. And I'm not gonna do it in any particular order. I will let you guys do the volunteer system. However, your attendance today depends on you speaking today. So everyone has to give a speech.
I can go. I ain't shy.
Go ahead then.
Get out of the way. So, domain 4 is the one that stood out to me. And this is in correlation with the video that we watched, Ron Clark on the move, and it just goes hand in hand. So when the staff and of course the building principal, everybody's acting with care towards the students. That's the number one priority. Teachers with negative attributes are placed in administration kind of reprimand. Again, it goes with Ron Clark. The ones that are the walkers and the riders, let's do something about that so everybody is moving forward. Build a bond with the community, which is very important. Is that culture that you want to see when you walk in the building. Also students, because we tend to focus on the students that are always struggling, that are not showing progress, and we leave behind the students that are really growing and contributing to the data, to the scores. So incentives for those students, that's very important, and that always kind of get left behind on that. Meetings are very important where everybody's on the same page, kind of the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. The hand cannot say to the feet, I'm more important than you, or the eye to the ear, I do this, what do you do? So every part of the body has to do what they're supposed to do, and then we function as a whole. Again, department meetings, very important to promote collaboration. Everybody needs to be coherent so we can be effective and have those practices that are effective.
I like it.
Pedagogy. So
You said
that's
60
me.
seconds. 60
That's
seconds,
it. I'm
right?
done.
All right. All right. So I would choose domain 2 and instructional values. The reason being is as a lead teacher, the principals and assistant principals, they put a lot of pressure on us to make sure every teacher is teaching towards the state testing. And most teachers are trying to come and they're using a lot of different sites. And really the sites actually doesn't embed exactly what's on the testing. So as a lead teacher, because I don't want the pressure to fall back on me. If it fall back on me, it's like a trickle effect. It goes to the assistant principal and it comes right back on me because I'm not checking what is actually being taught within the class system. Even though I'm not doing the teacher observation, and that's up to the principal. But even with the system in place where they does the observation and principals come in and do the observation, teachers sometimes align that day for what need to be taught instead of actually what's being taught consistently going towards student testing. So one of my biggest things is try to instill into the teachers that, you know, if it was your child, what would you want your child to do? So, or what would you want your teacher to prepare your child for? That's my 60.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to say, if you see me try to change and join in from this to the phone, then that's because I have to read in on with my fraternity. So.
Understood. Okay, so we have people who've raised their hand. Let me see. I don't know where it started. I think Courtney.
Yes, ma'am. I was trying to jump in because I was piggybacking off of Renata. But
Okay.
I also, that's why I was trying to get in. But it's okay. Because I was kind of torn between two of the domains. Starting with 3. Because I know this year consultants have like swarmed our campus. And it's been very important. And it's cool. It really has been really good this year because they've helped not only the teachers, but they've helped children a lot this year with a lot of private tutoring groups, a lot of the things that I get to do because I'm an inclusion teacher. You know, I get to do that one-on-one or that small group a lot, but that's not what a lot of the teachers get a chance to do. And so it has worked out because this group may be with the consultant while you have the teacher has a small group in their class. So I kind of like that, and it kind of moved me into domain 3, along like Renata said with Ron Clark. I love that video. I liked everything about it, and I really liked how he broke down the different types of teachers because you do have those. And the reason why I'm piggybacking to 3 is because with that video, it also showed me, even though we're providing all of this support, the teachers, not me, because I'm not anybody but a teacher. But even though they're providing all this support, we still have it still shows the difference between the walkers and the runners, and the people who are just hanging on, or the negative Nancy's of the staff. Even though the administration is like swarming us with help, You have some who are really taking advantage of it, who are really pleased with it. And yes, I'm getting that extra help I've been wanting. But then you also still have those who are complaining about it either way. They're not seeing the actual benefit of it. You know, how it's such a great thing. They're just still going to find that negative side of it. So I was torn between both.
All right. Thank you.
I don't know if I talked over my time or if it wasn't enough time.
All right, Courtney. Thank you. Mindy, you're up.
So while every one of these domains is going to be something that I need to focus on or learn, because this is a new adventure for me with administration, the one that most closely stood out to me was domain 5 about core values of your campus. And I think the reason this was such a light bulb moment for me, so the school where I'm currently working is undergoing a transition in administrative staff. We have a brand new principal this year. I've been a teacher for 16 years and have worked under 5 principals in that time. But when we came into this school year, we kind of recognized as a leadership staff on our campus that we needed to make some changes in our perception within the community, that there were some things that needed to be done. And as a teacher of 16 years, I've understood the concepts of how you have core values that drive your institution. But I think the time that we were having some of these very crucial conversations in our leadership teams was when we were reading this chapter in our textbook. And so while I understood that the way we did things mattered, this was kind of one of those light bulb moments of we've known the principal and the leadership sets the tone and it trickles down to the rest of the staff. But this kind of put it in perspective of being intentional. So when we make a decision, it's not just about we know that it's in the best interest of students. What are we doing to the community around us, to our partners that are in the community, the people who are, we are a very small rural school. We are a Title I school. And so while we have funding, you all know that it takes a community and a village for us to run programs. So it was very important for us to stop and think about our community perception and how as a administrator and then a leadership team, and then also as a teacher on my hallway department head, what kind of values are we communicating to our students? Because if our students understand that they're first and that everything we do benefits you, that you matter, you have a voice, we're not just going to dictate what needs to be done. We want you to participate in these conversations. And then us understanding too that having some transparency in how we communicate things. I would say as a school campus, we've always tried to make the decisions that are in the best interest of our students. But I don't think that we've always communicated that in the way that we've handled. We've not necessarily been transparent in how we answer questions with kids. So I think that the idea of, to me, the thing that ties it all together, while they do all completely overlap, is that I think core values are very fundamental in making sure that the rest of these domains get enacted accurately. We can be data-driven in our instruction, but the purpose of data-driven instruction goes back to what we value as a campus. And then as somebody who's been watching a change in administrators, a change in leadership, and looking at what we want to do as a campus, I think that's been one of those things that when I think about stepping into an administrative role, everything matters. But I do think that this is one of the key concepts that I need to be intentional and purposeful in establishing a tone and creating the right climate on whatever campus I choose to serve in.
I think you are so on point, and even just having that culture in that community is so important. Thank you for sharing. Amanda, you are next up.
Mindy is a hard act to follow. I currently am a department chair, so domains 1 and 4 really kind of came together for me as well. Domain 1 really focused on how we analyze our data. About 4 years ago, we had an administrator that the way that we looked at our data together, he actually ranked us in order from like best to like worst. And it really like shook up our entire department. Everyone like got really bad hostility. Everyone stopped collaborating because it was like, well, I'm not going to share anything because she's better than me and now I want to beat her. It changed the entire dynamic of our department. And then that following year, they asked me if I would step up and be department chair. And so when I did, I was like, well, the first thing that I want to do is shift the way that we analyze data as a whole. And so when we start looking at data now, it's more so in like as a department, if we score 65% proficiency on this standard, but Dr. Cockrell gets 73%, I want her to share something she felt benefited her students because she was almost 10% higher than the rest of our department. So the way that we change the way that we are analyzing our data has really helped the way that we are collaborating as a department. In our weekly PLCs, we have at least one or two teachers go to the board. They literally teach us like we're their students, just to show like the light bulb moments that we're having with our students. And some of them are first year teachers, so they're not exactly comfortable sharing their instruction, but they'll bring in like a resource. And so we of course have like the 5th grade math drive where we all upload and share things. So like if I find something that works, I share it so we can all use it. So the way that we use data to drive our students, our goal is to ultimately grow them as a whole, not just as an individual teacher. So domains 1 and 4 really kind of came together for me as a department chair.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I agree 100%, but that whole notion of putting teachers in ranking order, that just made me uncomfortable.
It made all of us uncomfortable. It changed the whole department. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, you live and die as a team. When that data comes back, it's going to say 5th grade. It's not going to say what Amanda did and someone else. It's going to say 5th grade. And if 5th grade isn't strong as a team, you fail to have collective teacher efficacy because we're driving a grade. We are not driving people. It's all about the team. So I'm glad you're doing a better service for your team. All right, Heather McNeil, you're up.
Okay, so just a little background. My school has gone through many, many transitions. I have been there since 2014. We have been a separate seventh grade and then an 8th grade school. Then they combined us to be 7th and 8th grade. And then they added K through 8. So we have had multiple transitions. We have had multiple turnover employees. I am actually the only person in leadership that has been there. Everybody else has been new. I've been through 6 principals since I've been there. They all inherit kind of not, I wouldn't say a mess, but it's a difficult situation sometimes. So they have to always be responsible for the previous person's data. So, and the turnover rate for the teachers is extreme. I'm not saying anything bad about my school. That's just the way it is. We do have to work with some negative connotation for where our school is located and our school's past. So we're always trying to defend ourselves. Our students are awesome. Our teachers are more than capable. I think it's just we have to adjust, and we're always getting new people in, so it's difficult. But I wanted to focus on domain 3, continuous development of teachers and staff. With that said, with the situation, we always pretty much this school year, our principal that was hired quit on the first day, and our assistant principal was put into the principal's job. So just observing her, and she is my mentor, just observing her and how she has adjusted in terms of the faculty and staff and their job duties. And, you know, she's had to hire some people like a month into school. We've had to deal with a couple of situations. Just observing her and how she puts that purposeful intention on what my end goal is and who I want to fit in and how I want to do it. That's kind of been an eye opener for me. I have said in past in interviews, and you know, I know what you kind of want to look for, but you know, if you're hiring someone 3 months into the school year, you know, sometimes you're getting the bottom of the barrel, basically. So, you know, sometimes you luck out and you get like a star person. But usually, you know, sometimes it's teachers that you have to work with and you have to cultivate and you have to provide that training and you have to see where their weaknesses are so that way you can support them. Because if anybody going into this profession, they want to help kids. And if you give them the opportunity and you give them the training, they will rise to the occasion. And if they don't, put them on a plan of improvement. If they don't do it, then they can move on to the next job. So, you know, and we've had to do that several times. but there's one teacher in particular that I have in mind. It was a very rough first year with her. She came in half of the year. The next year it was improved. We provided training, we provided different things. I know I had to work with her on some classroom management as the counselor, but she, like this year, she's awesome. Like she is teaching her curriculum, she's great at. We just had to work on the other things. And we have provided that. And as a principal, you have to recognize that and you have to be able to foster that growth. So sorry if I went over.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. I would agree. And the thing that I've realized this year as I've done teacher interviews is that what's coming out of college isn't the best. And I don't mean that in an ugly way. I'm one of those realists. And I've done quite a few interviews, and I will say I have an interview team, and in 2 days we interviewed 16 people. And out of 16 people, we were like, meh, maybe one could work for us. It's gonna take a lot of training, walking alongside, but you got to grow your people. If this is where we are in life, you're gonna have to start growing your people. And as an administrator, you'll realize that the teaching profession is getting harder and people don't want to do what is being asked of them for what we're under right now. So just a good, I mean, I love the fact that your people are working to get it all done, Heather. Candace Maloney, you're up next.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to ride to the second floor, but I wanted to do domain 5. And as a teacher, I struggled with this in that I felt like our administrators were not transparent with me. But this year I've transitioned into an academic coach role, and in part of my mentorship, I've been privy to a lot of conversations. And so I'm kind of an in-between teachers and admin right now. And a lot of this year I've learned that you can't just be transparent. You can't tell them everything about everybody because it, violates all kinds of regulations. And I can't tell people that we're doing this because little Johnny got caught doing this, or that we've switched up this with that. So trying to express my core values while also maintaining confidentiality of employees and students is something I know I'll struggle with as an admin, but I'm excited to try it.
Yes, you're right. It's a lot of things that, and my signature phrase at this point is you don't have an educational need to know. You don't. Because sometimes teachers want to know, why was he in the office? What happened? I'm sorry, you don't teach that student. You don't have an educational need to know. And they don't. And you have parents, if you discipline one, but another student is involved and they're like, well, what happened to so-and-so? I'm sorry, ma'am, if it were your child, you would not want me to tell the other parent the discipline for your child. Kids are under the FERPA law and you can't talk about them. And, and that's hard when you step into an administrative role. And I'm not saying being an admin, but you're in that role. And you all will be in that role when you start doing your mentoring and you're going into classrooms and you're helping your principals do things. And your friends on your hall are going to ask questions. And you have to learn that I can't share in the role I'm in as I'm being mentored. I can't share information with my buddies. And that's really hard for some people, but you have to learn that, because if your principal can't trust you, you won't move up. All right, where are we? Ashley, you're up next. You're muted.
Sorry, I lost my mouse on my computer. So I wanted to focus on domains 3, and mostly because of the role that I'm in right now, which is an instructional technologist for our district. And so I do a lot of our majority of our professional development district-wide with technology integration. But when I was reading through this, it also, I'm kind of like with Candace right now with mentorship, where I'm getting some experience with things that are outside of just with instructional technology. And I'm realizing now more than ever, especially with our teacher shortage, how important it is for us to work with what we have and really provide our teachers and other staff with the professional development that's needed to grow them in their current roles and beyond. And reading through this domain really made me more aware of everyone's role within a student's educational journey, that even our secretaries and our admin, like, they also need professional development. And so I know that it's important, of course, to train and support our teachers specifically, but it also kind of gave me an eye-opening, I guess, to other staff and how important that is as an admin to make sure that we're reaching everyone in their current role.
Great share. That is so true. We do need to have professional development because you got to stay current. Alex, you are up next.
Morning, good morning.
Morning.
I was a bit torn between domains 3 and 4, just because I know how important it is to have effective staff and, continuous development. But ultimately, I settled on community of care and collaboration, simply because that's just a huge domain to me. But I believe the highest, form of human existence is us working together and drawing off of each other's strengths and weaknesses and all of that good stuff. And particularly because I've experienced where there are systematic problems, and you hear, and I go around and you talk to different teachers, and we're all saying the same things, and then there's no change, or there's the same. We keep doing the same thing. They keep doing the same thing, expecting different results is insanity. And I've witnessed some of that insanity of us having like just systematic issues, coupled with maybe having teachers who, as I heard someone say, who have the desire to grow, want to be stronger and better educators, but not necessarily having a voice to address some of maybe the systematic issues. And of course, always at the same time admitting that, hey, I know that I need to grow in this area, or I need to get stronger and better. But can we also address some of the external factors that we all are collectively saying needs to be addressed? But that was my spiel.
Thank you so much, Alex. I agree 100%. And I've said, I do a lot of advocacy work, and I've said often that as teachers, as educators, period, we're muted a lot of times. No one wants to hear our concerns. No one wants to hear about what actually is going on in schools. They want to hear what's going on outside of like what the parents think. But we have to have a voice. And with us not being a unionized state, you have nothing to protect you if you went out and voiced your opinion, so I appreciate that perspective. Dottie, you're up next. You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so mine's a little different. I feel like I chose domain 3 just simply because for the past few years I've been the computer teacher. So I get to be outside of that tested area. I get to be a little bit more of the listening ear. I just get to have a lot of conversations and concerns of students, and just, help them with what's going on. But I chose that domain too because a lot of the issue, I feel like a lot of times, is just miscommunication and those clear expectations. And then especially this time of year as we're going into testing, and I completely understand because I'm not a tested area. So I don't have the stressors that the other teachers have, but I still think that as that approaches, we tend to get in that frump, and everybody's stressed. And so our expectations change a little bit. Our routines aren't the same, but because that foundation was not so solid in the beginning, then everybody's like, when we get to this time of year every year, it's like, oh, the kids are crazy and this is going on, and etc. And we start to forget our reason for what we're doing, and we start to slack off. And also just remembering that a lot of the students come with concerns about, well, this teacher, didn't listen to me, and I didn't do it because I didn't know what to do and I didn't want to ask, or every time I ask, I'm told, figure it out. The instructions are there. And I hear that so much. And I was in pre-K for 5 years and then went to 6th grade. So like I said, it was a big jump, but they have a lot to say. And they also, part of that, allowing them that, that leadership role and being a part of it. Even in my room, we do a lot of stuff because we have that time. So where they have to get up and be in those roles and have time, they have to read aloud and stand up and present and do those things, because if the environment is comfortable, then they feel like they have more of the open floor and they can ask those questions that they wouldn't normally ask. And what I try to just tell them all the time is, just talk to your teacher. Just get out of your comfort zone, and they do want to hear your concerns. It's just a lot going on, and there's a lot of us, and it gets busy. So if you don't ask, then y'all can't figure those things out. And so I'm big on the culture, because and I also, like, at our school, we have our math and ELA have their own pod. So they're kind of out there by themselves every day. And then, we cross paths as far as teachers, when we do, in the hall, or when we do our staff meetings or PLCs. But aside from that, there's no really crossing between each grade and each subject, and collaborating like that, which we have gotten better about that. Like for me, I swap my PLCs from, I'll go to a math one, but also because of that, it's given me an opportunity to go observe and just everybody's kind of chill about that, and they'll let you come see just so I can look. But all of those things involved in Domain 3, just like the environment and the culture, but those expectations and the routine, and being consistent with those things, and just having different ways. And I know it's, they're 6th grade, but I even have just in my room, just like I wish the teacher knew. And sometimes it's academic questions even on there, I wish in, math class, said teacher would, allow us to ask more questions or have more time, but by those things, I'm able to, just kind of express to the teacher, hey, these are those concerns. But it's, I think that's just a big one for me, is fostering that environment that everybody feels able to be heard, and also have an opportunity to grow in that.
Thank you, Dottie. I agree 100%. Kids need to have a voice. I'm gonna share a book that I've been reading with my staff. We do book studies. Oh wait, let me turn my sticky off. This book, Disruptive Thinking, it teaches about how kids need to have voice and choice, and giving them, chapter 4 kind of blew my staff's mind when we got into chapter 4, talking about all of the things that we do wrong with kids. It's like shutting them down. Go see it. We know you don't. So all of those things, I got to read another chapter this weekend, but it's important. And at 6th grade, they're trying to get their identity. And it's so important to let kids form their identity and not the one we think they should have. Mitchell, you're up next.
So a lot of people have talked about Domain 3, but I really think that's what I'm experiencing a lot in my school, or I'm observing right now in my school. A little backstory: in the middle of October, we got completely new administration. And then in January of the year, our ELA department got a brand new curriculum. And the curriculum has basically, because there was no time for training or professional development on it, the curriculum, the ELA teachers right now feel that they are basically just warm bodies in the classroom, because it does everything is done on computer, or it's basically, some of it they said is AI taught, and everything is just not involving them. So and there's a few that are struggling. It's like, do I even want to come back next year? Do I feel like this is where I want to be anymore? Because they feel like their voice as a teacher has just been taken away from them. And so that's some of the conversations I've had, is just, providing them, maybe if they would have been provided with professional development opportunities with the get-go through this new curriculum, that they might understand it better, and they might could have contributed to it. And I know they are already talking about this summer maybe coming together and figuring out how to make it better. But it's really struggling with them because it's in the middle of you get in the middle of a school year in January, and you're just thrown into it with nothing to do. And right now they're going and saying, what am I doing wrong? What can I do better? And it's a lot of strengths that is being given as feedback to them, which is great. And we want our teachers to feel valued and everything, but also teachers want to know what to improve on, what can they be better at. And so some of the times I think it's important that we look at the weaknesses that they have. And because if you're making your teachers better and you're bringing them along the process, then it's going to help your students in the long run.
Thank you, Mitchell. January is a hard time to implement a brand new program. Whoa. Where are we? Ms. Haynes, you're up next. Amina, did we lose her? I can't hear you. You're still on mute.
I was trying to figure out how to unmute it. Sorry. Okay, so my focus, there's so many that I can relate to and feel the need to grow in, but one in particular that stood out to me was domain 3 when it came to the growth. I know I have served as lead teacher, and now I'm at another school, and so I feel that the growth as a district, our math scores have dropped. And I do feel that if we focus more on setting goals for the staff as well as the students, one in particular that I think about is the personal growth for the professionals. I think if we were more geared at setting those individually and discussing them with our admin, I think that would make a big difference in our scores overall with the students, because I feel like we're all kind of on like different pages. And I know, like, for myself, some of the courses that I teach, I'm kind of like an island on my own, and so I'm kind of like, I don't know if it's forgotten about or it's like, okay, we trust you to do what needs to be done, and I don't know. I feel like I am growing my students, but I don't get the necessary feedback or the results that, you know what I'm saying, to kind of direct that. So I think that's important. But like I said, I could connect to so many others in so many ways, but that was the one I wanted to mention.
Yes, being on an island is hard. You have to figure out how to network with people even outside of your school so you don't feel that island. McDaniel, you're up next.
Well, I am like several others that several of these domains have reached me and have opened my eyes up to the bigger picture of what goes on campus instead of just what goes on in my classroom. But what has affected me the most was domain 2, which was the viable and guaranteed curriculum. I'm a history teacher. I'm not tested. We are the redheaded stepchildren of education. It feels like sometimes we are ignored, which I feel is missing the point. If you want your ELA scores to go up, focus on your social studies teachers and you'll see an improvement. However, I always thought curriculum was the resources that were purchased by the district to help you teach your standards. And it was very eye-opening to realize I was completely wrong. And I've been teaching for 10 years and nobody had shown that to me. And in our department, we've always thought we have to teach every standard. We have to teach every standard. We have to teach every standard. And we never do. And we are always left feeling like we don't do a good enough job because we don't get to reach every standard. But after reading this domain, I took that back to the history department because I'm the lead of the history department and said, hey, we're doing it wrong. what are the most important standards? What do we need to focus on? We all think they're important because we love history, but where do we need to spend our time? What can we just glaze over? What can we focus on? We have to pick most important ones. And then we have to make sure whatever we're using resources to support that curriculum, everything is part of curriculum. It's not just the resources, it's the standards and what you use to teach them. So, okay, so we're doing this activity. How does it connect to this standard? Does it really teach this standard? So it's been very eye-opening for me and the rest of the department. And in the last month, we've seen an increase in how we are looking at our instruction, and we've seen an increase in scores and also engagement in our students, just because we are looking at it differently. So that for me right now, that was the most important one, is understanding what curriculum actually is and how to make sure I'm supporting the school goals, even though I'm not tested, by changing things in my classroom.
Thank you for that perspective. I don't think a lot of times we spend a lot of time talking about the viable curriculum enough, especially, and I would say especially with our new teachers, because they think, oh, I need to teach this book from the first part of it all the way to the end, and that's not true. I think as educators, we did a better job during COVID because we had to teach our essential standards. What is essential for kids to know? Can we do a pre-test to make sure they already have foundational skills so we can keep moving? I think now that we've gotten back into our regular everyday teaching, we've gone back to, okay, we gotta teach everything. We gotta get all of it in. No, it's about going deeper. The depth of knowledge is the most important part. All right, Logan, you're up next.
All right. Like a lot of others, what the domain that stood out to me was domain 3 of continuous development of teachers and staff. I started my first year teaching was actually the COVID year, so I came in virtual, so things were very different. My first year that I taught first grade reading. So why this domain stood out to me was because I think that the school, I'm currently still at the school. This is my 4th year. The school that I entered in, the administration did a great job of giving me a gateway of expectations of and of guidance. Ever since I've been at this school, I came in with a mentor that was strictly for me, guiding me and giving me like all sorts of kind of feedback. At first, being your first year teacher, that's where a lot of your evaluations are coming from. But my principal, our lead teacher, they all made me feel comfortable with what I was teaching. I have a math endorsement, so with me getting a job and accepting reading, it was kind of mind blowing. I didn't really know, like you know all of the subjects, but I didn't know how important reading was and how many sections of reading, especially with the lower level grades that you're trying to teach them. After my first year, they moved me up to second grade reading. So, in third grade, they take a test, a huge test. So I felt like in second grade, it was a lot of pressure on me with teaching second grade. But I think that they all did a great job of helping me. I stayed in meetings, even on a district level. We would take tests, standards masteries, and we would go back and meet with all of the ELA teachers throughout the district and our district coordinator for reading. And she taught us like the way that her approach is really with visible learning. She would allow us to be in our students' shoes, like with different presentations in different ways of teaching. So I think that with continuous development of teachers and staff, that domain is very, very important, especially if you're looking for new teachers, especially if you're wanting to keep expanding on teachers and their learning for the betterment of the students.
I would agree. Reading is so important. That third grade reading gate is something that puts pressure on everyone as a whole. Good explanation. We are at Zachary.
Hey, so the one that I kind of want to touch on today is domain 5. It stood out to me talking about the core values, expanding your professional development as well as showing a safe environment, cultural acceptance, because I feel like all that starts at the top. If you can establish your core values at the top, establish trust at the top, be as transparent as possible as you can at the top, then all that will trickle down and just allow for a more accepting and like a kind of like a family-like atmosphere, as opposed to a this is my job, I have to be here type deal. And this is something me and my mentor has been talking about because he's taking on a new role as the supervising principal at our school, and he's establishing that trust within our school and setting his core values up within our school, and everybody's buying into it with some of the stuff he's been able to do so far within the school. And so I just feel like that will help with retaining teachers, helping teachers pursue professional development when they see the leadership pursue professional development as well. And I just feel like that will help with student achievement when all that comes together. Yes. All I got. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Trying to keep us on task. Okay, keep me on task. Caitlin, you're up next.
Good morning. I chose domain 1, data-driven improvement. I have always been teaching in a tested subject. So this really stood out to me, especially as a first-year teacher. I taught third grade reading, which I feel like was a lot of pressure with them having to pass that third grade gate. I remember going in and them talking about like PL levels, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So just from like an admin perspective, making sure if you do put a first year teacher in a tested area, making sure that they understand, not only the expectations, but the terminology of what is a PL, what are those expectations? And then using that data, those classroom assessments and stuff to drive your instruction throughout the year to improve your student success.
Thank you, Caitlin. Agreed. April.
Hello. I chose domain 3, the continuous development of teachers and staff. For the simple fact, when I very first started, because I teach kindergarten and it was 4 of us, and so one particular teacher, she was a veteran teacher. She had been teaching for 20 years. So at that point, I felt like, and I can go back to the Ron Clark video, how he talked about the runners and joggers. And I think she was a jogger, but she just got too comfortable. And I felt like when we did have those opportunities for like getting feedback and professional development and growth, she just didn't want to participate or anyway. But long story short, she retired, but now I'm the team leader, and it makes a difference when you provide continuous growth and development for your teachers, because it's like a whole new dynamic of a team. Like, we're rolling now. And not saying that she was a horrible person, but veteran teachers, they've been doing it for a while. But I can appreciate my district, as someone said, they had a great experience. And with my district, they have provided trainings, especially when, like, because I teach kindergarten, so we have to take the MCAS. If we don't know how to read the data of the MCAS or what it means, how are we going to teach, students to do their best? Because I feel that it's also part of being a great teacher. You need to know the data. You need to know what things mean when you're reading the reports and things like that. So I do appreciate how our district has made arrangements for us to get those trainings, to understand that even when we're teaching iReady, I'm still learning about iReady and their data reports and how to read it. So I do appreciate learning how to go back into my classroom and implement those things that we learn in those trainings. That's it. I'm trying to think of what else I was gonna say. But other than that, I do think the continuous growth and professional development is very important. Especially now we have a new teacher on our team. So, getting her motivated because now she's like, I don't think I could do this. But so having more trainings and trying to, get her to understand that it's gonna get better. So we do appreciate the trainings that our district offers us.
I think that's great to acknowledge. Being a veteran teacher doesn't make you the best teacher. It just doesn't. And sometimes new people coming into the profession has some things that they can add. And I always tell my new teachers, I didn't hire you to fit in. I hired you to stand out. Everybody here has a voice. Stand out, bring it to the table. Jasmine, you're up.
Okay, so I was torn like everybody else between domain 3, but 3 and 5 stood out the most, and 3 because I'm very big on professional development, and I agree with the statement that you said when you said just because they were coming straight out of college doesn't mean that they were the best. And I felt like that my first year because I felt like I was just thrown into this, and nothing that I learned in college made sense anymore because they taught me about textbook students. Because in school, in the textbook, they're going to do this. But when you're thrown into a school where your students may be taking care of their younger siblings or they're responsible for doing all of this, it's not working like that in your classroom. So I had to go back and research and do professional development and see how can I motivate them to learn. So that's why 3 was more important. And then domain 5, because it making sure that the leader is strong and transparent. And I've seen a school crumble because a leader couldn't self-reflect on certain things, and it began to cause a culture and climate situation. It didn't nobody trust anyone there, and so it was a strong staff, and that could have grown the school to the top of its capacity, but because they weren't willing to work together because they wasn't shown how, it crumbled and it failed and it caused a lot of people to leave that school the next year. So that's why domain 5 stands out the most.
Thank you. Yes, that's very important. Like you think it's what it is, but once you get a classroom, it's like, whoa. I wish I could go back and apologize to my first year students. Like y'all were the experiment. I'm sorry. All right, Timothy, you're up.
All right, I think I'm probably going to be one of the odd man out because I'm actually going with you on domain 6 and the financial funds, mainly because I'm a coach and having to use funds yearly and daily and see how hard it is to want to get and purchase things that you know you need, but trying to see the order of importance to need to purchase things and which things are probably going to be more beneficial or something that you think might be more beneficial, but there might be something else. And I think people also forget to think about, and I think I did as an earlier teacher, but I see it more now, that all the funds for districts are earmarked and you got teachers that don't understand that, hey, I can't get what you want because we don't have the funds. They don't understand that it's not all in one lump pile, that everything has a specific purpose of where it has to go. They're like, why are we spending money on all these consultants? We don't need these consultants. We know what we're doing, but that money is earmarked specifically for consultants. So you have to use it for consultants. I can't go and put this money in this section and say, hey, I want to spend it here. And I think that's going to be a big issue for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people also have trouble dealing with money that's not theirs. Just kind of like an uncomfortable feeling and knowing that if you screw it up, it's all going to come back on your head because money is a big issue. And I know being a coach, like you have to be very careful on how you're dealing with money, how you're using the money, or you could instantly lose your job real quick.
I like the ending to that, Timothy. You could lose your job real quick. Correct. If you don't understand where that money went or is being spent, you can quickly lose your job. It's like testing and your finances as an administrator. You don't want to mess those two up. Thank you for that perspective. Amy, you're up.
Hey, I'm probably like the majority. I was torn between 3 and 4, but I really think all of these tie in together. Y'all forgive me. I've been sick all week. My voice is all jacked up. But I think just with this year, and this is my second year in a new school. I came from a district where it was very micromanaging. And with my new district, the difference is they kind of they trust you to do your job, but it's almost too laxed, I think. So they don't offer, there's also a difference in the budget. So the previous district, they had a lot of money for a lot of professional developments that were just kind of already on the calendar. As where the professional developments that are at my new school and district are more, I guess, within the school. There's not so many that are from companies or, wherever they may come from. But I think it's important to look at your teachers and look at your staff and see what areas you need for improvement. And not be afraid to talk to the teachers and say, hey, this is the area I think we need to work on. It's kind of like, with your students, you pinpoint those either deficit or the areas that need to be worked on or the areas that you just really think they could shine in. And you're not afraid to say, hey, let's figure out a plan and work together to improve area. Or I see that you're doing this. Why don't we try this? I've noticed with my current admin, while they definitely trust you to do your job, they don't do a lot of that critiquing of the teacher. It's almost like they're afraid to lose the teacher. So there's that fine line of being the micromanaging admin versus, the very helpful one or the too lax admin who it almost comes off like you're either too scared to talk to your teachers or you don't care. And I don't think they don't care. It just, they've probably dealt with so much drama in the past trying to help the teacher to where it was perceived as, oh, well, they just think I'm not a good teacher. So I think that being able to approach the situation to where it's a helpful perspective rather than troll the teacher is something that would probably develop over time and experience. So that's all I really have.
Great perspective. It is a fine line. It really is, because you have to know your teachers. Some of them, if you give feedback, too much feedback, it hurts their feelings. They shut down. They're just like kids. There's some kids you can be stern with, and then there's some kids you have to call them in and you got to kind of love on them and then give them feedback. Teachers are the same way, and you have to know that. But you got to give feedback, whether it is constructive or it is, a attaboy. You still have to give feedback. That's part of the gig. Like, this is the job we have to do. Let's see. Judd Lucas, you're up next.
Hey, how are y'all? I wanted to talk about domain one, in particular the data. And I think the data and domain one tie into all the other domains, whether it's professional development, the budget, curriculum, all of that. I know when we talk about data and data-driven instruction and all that in our district, everybody rolls their eyes, but data does have its place. And I think it's very important, especially in my field of work with special education. And I apologize if you hear my kids in the background, they're fighting. But in special education, particularly last month and the month before that, during the evaluation season, I guess you could call, we have teachers coming up saying this child needs special education, or this child needs this and this. And usually my follow-up question is, can you show me the data? And if it's just anecdotal or subjective evidence, that's hard to stand on as far as an evaluation goes and as far as determining what the child needs. And, it's not saying we don't want to help the child. We want to help all of them, but we need something to stand on. And if the teachers, we have a lot of good teachers and tutors who can provide just weeks and weeks, if not years, of good data from probes every week where they've grown or they haven't grown. And, those types of teachers really make our job easy as far as identifying the needs of students with disabilities. And as an administrator, data plays its role as well, whether it's seeing your teachers and seeing how they're doing and giving them feedback on that. And whether it's managing a budget or the curriculum, you want to see if it's working or not. And it has to be clear and in an obtainable measure. So setting the goals beforehand is probably as important, if not more important. You have to have something to be able to measure in the first place. Otherwise, you're not going to get good data from it.
Agreed. I think you're the only one that picked domain one too.
Well, I think Caitlin before me picked it. The who did third grade or first year.
Okay. Yeah, one
So-
more person did, yes. Data is the most essential part of the job. I mean, everything you do is driven by the data you intake, whether it's student data, whether it's, looking at resources and you study the research behind it. Everything is data driven in education. And if it is not data driven, then you need to go back and make it data driven. And I agree with you 100%. I'm glad you brought out that piece about special education, Judd, and identifying students with disabilities. Because if a kid hasn't had a strong foundation, there's gaps in learning, but that may not show up as a specific learning disability. And so just recognizing those things. So thank you for that perspective. Jeffrey, you're going to close us out today.
All right, good morning. And it's ironic that you said about domain one. That is what I'm speaking on as well. I actually teach in a different district that I live in. And when I applied in my district, the reason why the principal said that he did not give me the job because I'm a new teacher. And that the class that he needed was a tested subject area. And so I teach out of district than where I live at. And so when we talk about, and I do still right now, do not teach tested subject area. And that kind of done something to me is when we had an assignment, when we had to evaluate data. I couldn't put a lot of information in because I don't have any data that I see. And that made me feel some type of way. So what I did, I went back to the teacher data that teach 8th grade science and got with him and say, teach me about data a little bit. I said, I always see the number 442. It didn't bother me because I'm not tested subject. It didn't ring a bell to me at that time. But the assignment that you gave us and the group that we had to do, and then and it made me feel bad when I tell them, well, I can't help y'all on data because I don't know data. And so I got with Mr. One of the other science teacher at Norfolk Gulfport, and he explained to me how to read it and things like that. And so then I want to become more involved in how can I help? What can I do to help now? Now that I can understand it a lot better, what can I do? So me and my other two 7th grade science teachers, since we not tested, what we do every Tuesday, we would get with the 8th grade science group and ask them, what can we teach our student for the next year that's coming up? So they'll be better prepared. Or what can we help y'all at and things like that. And also, even with ELA and math, to get their data scores up, every other Wednesday, we either take math, get with our math teachers and say, what you want us to help you work with, and things like that. Not knowing how important data was until recently, and it was truly an eye opener for me. And that's one thing I can really say that now we have actually finished our standards at 7th grade. We are teaching 8th grade standards now for the 7th graders that are getting ready to go to the 8th grade next year. So that is what we're starting to do now to help improve the data that can benefit the school and the scores as a whole.
That's a good way of looking at that, Jeffrey, because, we have 5th grade and they take science for the first time in 5th grade. But my 5th grade does work with 4th and 3rd to talk about what are those foundational skills they need prior to entering 5th grade science. Because everything builds on each other. And if a kid hasn't gotten those foundational skills, we want an 8th grade or 5th grade teacher to teach it all. That's unrealistic. So that's a very key thing. And believe it or not, ELA needs to embed some of the text because our ELA teachers talk with our science teachers because when they take state tests, the hard passage is always science. And what do kids lack background knowledge in? Science.
Yes.
It,
And
it,
another thing that we do too, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Another thing that we do now, time we implemented writing more at our school district as well too. So every 2 weeks in science, they have to do a writing prompt and submit it in paper. And then we have to evaluate and go back in paper and evaluate their writing and see what type of score, what kind of feedback they got from that writing.
I love it. We did a big overhaul of our writing curriculum this year, and we worked with a person from the State Department this year. And we literally have a solid writing plan in place because that was the one thing we didn't have. Teachers were teaching writing, but never from a vertical alignment standpoint. What are you teaching in third? What are you teaching in fifth? What are you teaching in fourth? Like, does the language match? Even simple things that people don't think about. What do you call an introduction paragraph, sentence? It can't be a hook or an aha statement. Then they get to fifth grade and they're like, what? This is your introduction? What? So we just did a lot of work on writing this year. So I appreciate when science teachers say, yeah, we're writing, we have prompts. Like you're speaking to my heart with that. Like I think they need that as kids. Make it all make sense. Heather, hand raised. Go ahead.
And I would like to give Mr. Farmer and my science department props. And because I say my teachers because, I deal with them a lot. In fact, Mr. Farmer, he's on top of his grades. I never have to give him any flack about grades and transfer grades. But my teachers, they take the initiative to go and search for things. If you address a concern with them, I would say probably 95% of them don't get their feelings hurt. Well, they might a little, but they get it together and they go start pulling resources, or they ask, hey, how can I do this? And I, as a counselor, I kind of hear what the teacher thinks about things and then what the administrator thinks about things. So it's kind of like I play mediator sometimes. It's like,
my
hey,
counselor does too.
The teachers aren't happy right now. You're telling them to look at the data, but you're not explaining what you want them to do with the data, or you're not addressing the discipline issues so they can address how to teach it in the classroom. So it's kind of like, but I have to give props. My teachers do go out and search things. They really do for improving. So, and data is a big thing on our campus, and we do look at it and we do use it.
That's awesome. Look at that. You got a Saturday shout out. Go ahead. But yeah, data drives instruction. I tell, when teachers get in their feelings about their data, I say, look, this is a starting place. Look at it objectively and take your feelings out of it. Look at the data. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? After you look at it collectively as a grade level, then take your personal data, take your personal class data, and take all your students, put your standards down. Who's low? Who's high? I say you gotta break it apart. And we've gotten rid of a lot of data because I can't stand us having to look at 4 different data points, like 4 different assessments. Why? What is going to drive your instruction? Pull that piece of data and disseminate it. Go through it piece by piece. Look at kids. And that's been my stance all school year. We're looking at kids. We're not looking at numbers. They're people. When you have a conversation with a kid, you need to talk about you're very strong in this area. Celebrate. Before you go into, he didn't score well on this and he didn't do good. Celebrate what he did do well on. Because even in a kid that's a 2, he had to get to a 2. Where is it that he was strong or she was strong? So that is very important. And if you are in a subject area like Jeffrey that isn't data driven, or you don't give an assessment, if you're going to, and I know I said this first class, if you're going to be an administrator, an AP, a principal, working in curriculum, SPED department, any area where you're going to lead, if you don't know about data, you're not going to make it through your interview. And that's just the truth. If you don't know about certain things, I know we have kindergarten people on here and first grade people, and they'll tell you the buzzwords right now in that area is science of reading. If you don't know about the science of reading, you need to do some research. If you're an educator, you are supposed to be a lifelong learner. And when these new things come out, you have to read about them. I read, well, I listen more now than I do read because I like Audible and I can do other things while I'm listening to it. But you have to stay current. Find a podcast that is in your subject area where you can stay abreast of all the new things. Education is changing so rapidly right now. If we don't get in front of it, we're going to be so far behind. If you don't know about AI, you need to get online and start doing some research. Because when I tell you AI, the kids know. These high school kids have been in the know for the last 2 years. We are now getting in the know. We got to catch up. And AI right now is the biggest thing that's moving forward in our high schools and our middle schools. And if you don't know, you're going to be grading stuff and giving hundreds for stuff that these kids haven't even done. So just being very staying on top of the things that are going on currently in education is most important. I would also say if you're not a part of some type of organization where there's emails and newsletters and magazines and things that you can get that you can read and stay on top of things, I would encourage you to do that. Professional development, that's a big thing. I know I heard one person say they were in a district where they had a lot of outside professional development and transitioned to a new district. Well, now they don't have all of that. I'm not a title school. When they give me professional development, my budget is $1,000. If y'all can find a presenter that'll come here to Mississippi for $1,000, please send me their name because no one's coming for that. So we have to be very strategic in how we do professional development. My teachers, I tell them all the time, you're the expert. If I walk in your room and you're doing something I think the staff needs to know about, I ask them, how do you feel about presenting at Monday staff meeting? And we've done a lot of that this year. I've gotten to a point now, I have teachers come to me and say, look, this is something cool I've learned about, and this is what I'm doing. Can I present? So you have to get really deliberate about professional development. And I would say the big takeaways from y'all as a cohort is making sure you're data driven, making sure you know what you know. And because, you'll be going out for interviews here soon because your cohort will end in a little bit, you need to make sure you know what you know. And if you don't know it, get out there and research, check with your colleagues. Take your mentor hours seriously. Don't just go mentor. Somebody says, go do a football game and I'm going to sign off on that. Is that going to teach you anything? No, you observe kids and you discipline kids every day in your classroom. That is not the best use of your time. Now, they say to you, hey, I got a meeting at district office. Would you like to go with me? That's a good use of your time. You want to know, what does a meeting look like? How is it ran? Going to a board meeting. You want to know what's expected of principals at a board meeting. Those are best uses of your time. Don't go into a mentor, don't go into a practicum to do some hours just to tick boxes. Because what I will tell you, this process is to help you get an idea in mind about being an administrator. So take the hours seriously and be strategic. When you're out this summer, sitting down with your mentor and saying, these are the areas I feel like I'm weak in and I'd like to grow in. And I appreciate Jeffrey saying that as well. I don't know about data. I had to learn about that. Being very proactive and what it is your areas of weakness are and learning about them. I didn't know my area of weakness was going to be finance this year, but I learned that. And so then I started getting on the bike and learning quickly. Like it was a fast and furious learning curve. Ashley did drop in the chat, guys, MDE resource to help you guys figure out the guidance around AI. So if you want to click on that before the class ends so that it'll open up and you'll have that resource. Ashley, do you want to add anything to that?
It just got put out and there's a recording on there. I know that some people had said they aren't very familiar with artificial intelligence, but a lot of those resources share for teachers, admin, even above admin, like up to the superintendent level, how you can kind of get it. I use the quote, get ahead, because I don't know if we'll ever really be ahead of AI in education, but it's a great resource. I did raise my hand too. You had mentioned the hours, and I know that on within the Canvas, it said that we had embedded hours. Are we needing to submit or do anything for that?
So I'm going to say this, and I know I've emailed several of you. Anything that deals with your hours, send those questions to Dr. Sellers, because I don't answer questions around your hours, because at the end of the day, she is the one that's going to say you earned them or you didn't. And I don't want to tell you something and she comes back and say, like, no, that's not correct. So I like to just send y'all straight to her for those questions. And she's really good about responding and giving you the best updates on things. And I know many of you have to take the SLLA. It's the hardest test ever. No, not really. It's just the most expensive. But getting a group of people that you can study with and prepare for it, that's how I got through it. We had like 4 study sessions, and we all met and we did all kinds of studying together, mock evaluations or whatever you want to call them. It's a hard test and it's expensive. My husband's thing is, if you pay $425 for a test, you need to pass it. I'm like, you're right. And I took it at Christmas. So it was like, yeah, you're right. So just being aware that that's coming up, and y'all will have to take it to be an administrator. Renata.
I have a quick question in regards to the test, since you mentioned it. Can you take the test anytime throughout the program, or you have to finish the program and then take the test?
I'm not sure.
Because I purchased the practice one and I took it.
I want to say you have to have so many hours in before you take it. I know I hadn't finished when I took the assessment.
Okay.
But that was a while ago. So you're talking like 2012. I can't remember.
I purchased the practice test and I did really well on it. So I was like, well, if that's the case, I can go next weekend and take it and get it out of the way. But
the best advice I was given about SLLA is, don't think school, don't think where you are, think nationally. Mississippi does things a lot different than everywhere else in this country. You have to know along that line of not just what we do at my school or what we think in Mississippi. Nationally, how do we handle these situations? And that's when you get to those scenarios where you literally have to give a written response. Don't go from your brain, how I wouldn't allow this, blah, 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 because somewhere in this nation, it is allowed and people are getting through it. So when you do take it, eventually you'll get there, and it just think nationally, broadly, and discuss it in that manner, and don't think locally.
And you are so correct on that, because I noticed that, and I responded with what I knew had taken place in my surroundings, in the schools that I'm at, and it was, yes. So I appreciate that feedback. So thank you.
All right, guys, that's all I have for you. I will do some grading today so that I can get all of that stuff in. Grades, I have to have your grades turn in by, I just wrote that down. Wait, let me find it. By 12 noon on May 7th. Am I going to be grading at that time? Nope. I'm just going to be honest with y'all. See, you have a discussion that's actually due on the 1st. I'm going to tell you by May 3rd, you need to have all that stuff turned in. That's a Friday. By May 3rd, you need to have everything turned in, because May 4th, I will be submitting my grades. I'm going to tell you all that because, I'm giving y'all wrong information again. I go to Orlando on May 2nd. My daughter has a cheer competition. So as I'm in a car riding for 12 hours, May 2nd, I'm going to be grading. Because when I get up Friday on the 3rd, like I said, I will be submitting all the grades on May 3rd. Because we'll be in a gym for the rest of that weekend watching people cheer. And I just know how my life is set up. That's what we'll be doing. I like to tell people ahead of time so you can prepare. If you have anything out there that has a 0, go fix it. Put something in there so you can get a grade. Look at your overall averages. You'll see those. They should pop up. They should tell you exactly where you are at this current moment. You should have an A in this class. I'm just being honest with you, because if it's something that's awful, I will ask, please resubmit. If you turned in something and you are off base, I'll put a grade in and I'll say, please resubmit, because I want you to get the best score. So if you have a 0 for something, I will tell you, hunker down this weekend and get it all done. It's one of those things, if you get behind, it's like hard as I'll get out to catch up. When I get behind in grading your papers, it's like it takes up a whole Saturday and Sunday, or Monday, Tuesday after work. I have to hunker down and get it caught up. So y'all have to get it all turned in, because as of end of day on the 2nd, I won't revisit anything. And I try to be very transparent, as we learned in our domains. I like to be transparent. After end of day on the 2nd, I'm not going to regrade anything. I'm not going to go back in and change a 0 to something else. It is what it is after 4 o'clock on May 2nd. Okay? I need everybody to hear that. And if somebody's not on this call, please share that information with them. They have until May 2nd, 4 p.m. to get everything done. Because I do have to get all grades submitted. And your last assignment, the discussion, is due on the 1st. And your discussion is basic feedback for me. You don't have to respond to anyone. You don't have to go back and say anything to 2 classmates. You're literally giving me feedback about this class. And after you put that feedback in there, literally you're done. And you could literally do that today if you wanted to, because it's that simple. And then you have your 6 domain project that's due on the 28th, and teacher evaluation, which is due tomorrow. Hopefully that helps in your planning out your days. I know we're in the season of testing, and that makes everybody a little stressed. And when you get home in the afternoons, you just want to go to sleep from standing and walking all day. I do get it. We started 3rd grade gate this past week, so I get it. But get things turned in. Some of you guys will receive an email from me that just simply states, I really need your assignments. I send those out a week out, so you know that I'm looking for your assignments. That's all I have. Any other questions about anything that I can help y'all with?
I don't think my school email works properly. If you've ever sent me anything, I've never received it. Can I just, that's why I emailed you from my school email the other day.
Yeah, well, I surely responded. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I never responded back because I'm a cheer coach, so I had a ball game that night. But and all of the questions that I had are being asked today, so it's cool. It's fine.
And I have gotten a little behind on answering things. You know, it's just the nature of the life right now. Everything's going fast and furious. So I apologize for your grades and your comments and things that I've responded a little bit late to. But if you do need something, please send me an email. I'll get back with you. I've been a little bit better with emails than I have inbox, but send it to me. I'll try my hardest to get back with you on a response. And I know some of you have classmates that have not been as attentive to your group projects, and I appreciate you guys telling me about that. And I'm grading accordingly. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Again, I'm gonna email away if you need me. Have a great day.
And I may email from my school, my personal school, my job.
That is fine. If I get it, I will respond.
All right, thank you.
All right, y'all have a great day.
You too.